What's that? You say you have to write a 10-page paper, but you feel like you can make your point in 2? Well, have we got the video for you. More than once, I've been on the receiving end of tirades about how English classes are all about fluff and turning simple statements into long, drawn-out papers. Oh, I just don't understand it, people say. I can make my point in a paragraph. Why do I have to write pages and pages of fluff just to meet the requirement? What's the point? Well, I don't really want to start a fight, but the people who usually complain the loudest about this sort of thing are engineering students. So, maybe, and this is just, me being crazy, but maybe writing teachers know something about writing that engineers don't. And maybe, again, just maybe, there's a good reason for length requirements, and it's actually about keeping things short instead of making them unnecessarily long. So before we talk about fluff itself, let's just agree that no teacher is ever going to ask you to create fluff just for the sake of creating fluff. You see, every page that you write is a page that your teacher has to grade. And so if you can make a point in a paragraph, there isn't a teacher in the world who's going to ask for 16 pages, because that's 16 more pages of fluff that they're going to have to grade. And who wants to create that much work for themselves? Let me tell you who doesn't. People who make a writing teacher's salary. But I'm going off on a tangent. In today's show, we're going to talk about fluff. We're going to talk about the purposes of academic writing, and we're going to talk about the real reasons that your assignments have length requirements. So whether you're an engineering student or not, the things that we talk about today will help you to write longer, stronger papers. And of course, if you're interested in more writing advice like this, don't forget to subscribe for all the latest from the channel. So before we go much further, I guess we should define the concept of fluff. What is fluff? Well, fluff is stuff that doesn't belong in your paper. I guess if you were a structural engineer, you might say that fluff is anything that doesn't contribute to the structural integrity of your project. Fluff is extra stuff, it's filler, it's unnecessary noise. So, given that definition, do you really think that the creation of fluff is ever going to be the point of an assignment? Well, of course not. But we can talk about fluff all day without really understanding it. So let's take a look at a very fluffy paragraph to see what fluff looks like in the wild. Since the dawn of human civilization, people from all over the world have been locked in an unending war about the permissibility of putting pineapple, a fruit, on pizza. At this momentous occasion, I write this paper to offer my opinion that, without any question, I believe that pineapple does belong on a pizza for a long list of good reasons that I will share in the following paper. It sounds kind of impressive, doesn't it? But how much is it actually saying? If you're reading this paper and the author is trying to get you on the same page or to persuade you that pineapple does in fact belong on a pizza, how much of this paragraph is actually doing anything to get you on the same page? Really, fluff is anything that doesn't help the author to accomplish their rhetorical goal. So let's take a closer look at the paragraph, this time cutting out all of the fluffy bits. Yes, we did talk earlier about how introductions should set the stage and give readers context, but this isn't really context. It's the author just getting started before they really know what they want to say. Pro tip, anything that reaches back to the dawn of time is probably fluff. You can't know about what was happening that long ago, and pizza was definitely not at the heart of things, so you don't need to say that it was. Now, do we really need to call pineapple a fruit? What does that actually add? Don't tell us you're writing a paper, we already know you are. And don't bother announcing that you'll be offering your opinion. Again, we're reading your paper, so we already know that it's happening. Of course you have a long list of good reasons, and of course you think they're good, you wouldn't be sharing them otherwise. So with a little reordering, we end up with something much shorter and much more to the point. Despite ongoing debate, pineapple really does belong on pizza. So rather than write a paragraph that says you're going to say something, just say it. And now I can imagine in my head all my past engineering students saying, yes, exactly, this is why it's insane to ask for a 4-page paper. Well, hold your horses, friends. Let's take a minute to talk about the real goals of academic writing. So maybe it's hard to understand why your essay assignment needs to be so long, but maybe it's easier to think in terms of math homework. How many times have you heard a math teacher say, show your work? Well, did that ever annoy you? Why would your math teacher ask you to show your work? Isn't the whole point just whether or not you got the right answer? Now I'm kind of asking a leading question, and the answer is no. Your math teacher doesn't just want to see that you got the right answer, they want to see that you know how to get the right answer. Because if you're going to do more complex math problems in the future, you have to understand where the right answers come from. When you don't show your work, all you have is an answer, and what your teacher wants is to see that you know how to do math, and that's why they ask you to show your work. Now the same principle applies to academic writing. When it comes to the work that scholars, scientists, and other researchers do, the point of their writing is not just to say what they know, but to show how they know what they know, or to show where their knowledge comes from. Scientific papers, for example, don't include analysis and methods sections so that their authors can just get straight to the point. Really, these sections serve the purpose of helping readers to understand where the scientific findings come from so that then they can determine whether or not those findings are valid. Anyone can write a short paragraph that says we've just discovered a way to create limitless amounts of clean energy, but of course readers are only going to believe them if the authors can then show how they do it. When you're writing in a college level class, the real goal of your paper is not just to state what you know or believe, but rather to say how you know what you know and why you believe what you believe, to show where your knowledge comes from. So when someone says that they just want to get to the point, what they're really doing is missing the whole point of academic writing. Everywhere probably, but especially in the academic world, knowledge is judged based on the methods that are used to obtain it. So if you don't show your work in your writing, you don't give your readers a chance to see where your knowledge comes from and to decide whether your position is really worth paying attention to. So let's get back to our pineapple pizza paragraph. In its current state, this little sentence does a good job of saying what the author believes, but it doesn't give us any sense of why that author believes it or why we should believe it too. All it does is state an opinion, but remember, we're looking for an academic argument, not a tweet. Okay, a paragraph like this one will get you way closer to a 10-page limit than the single sentence of getting to the point ever would. And notice that this paragraph says a lot more than the fluffy version we saw first. While the first one just took a long time to say one thing, this version not only adds much more meaningful information, but also explains why the author believes what they do. It shows where the claim comes from and shows the reader why they should believe it too. Of course, there's some fluff in this version too, but that's not really a problem. We can always cut that out. Despite ongoing debate, pineapple really does belong on pizza because it creates contrast. High contrast foods like chocolate-covered pretzels, taste, hot fudge sundaes, temperature, and creme brulee, texture, are popular because they provide more interesting eating experiences that keep eaters from getting bored. When it comes to pizza, pineapple's sweetness and acidity contrast the fatty and salty cheese and cured meats, thereby balancing the eating experience and making it more enjoyable. Thus, to assert that pineapple simply does not go on pizza is to reject the good culinary technique of creating bites with high contrast. With the fluff trimmed out of this version, we not only have a paragraph that says many more meaningful things, but it's also nearly twice as long as the all fluff paragraph we started out with. So how about that? Not only did we cut out fluff, but we also got you a whole lot closer to your assigned paper length. So to wrap up, I think a lot of the complaints about paper length requirements come from a misunderstanding about the purposes of academic writing. Really, when you're writing in an academic setting, your goal in your writing is to show your work, or to demonstrate to your readers where your knowledge and understanding come from. If you're going to put in the effort to really show your work, then you should have no trouble getting to the required length of a paper because showing your work takes up space. When you really show your work, there's no need to adjust your margins, to make your commas a few font sizes bigger, or anything like that. In fact, when you really do show your work in your writing, you'll probably find that the length requirements for your papers function more as a limit than as a minimum. Fluff is unavoidable in a first draft, but if you write a fluffy first draft that also legitimately shows your work, you'll probably blow right past that length requirement. Then when you revise, your task will be to cut out the fluff, preserve the work that you've shown, and get back down to the required length of the paper, not try to invent ways to pad out your paper by just creating more stuff. So yes, do avoid writing fluff, but also don't forget to show your work. That's the real goal of academic writing. And with that, I'll leave you to get back to writing your paper. As always, if this video was helpful, thumbs it up and share it with a friend. Leave your comments and questions down below, and I'll see you again soon. In fact, when you really show your work in your writing, hi.